Hello everybody, my name is Amy and I'm one of the peer tutors here at SNHU, and this workshop recording is going to focus on how to read your rubrics, a little bit about citations, some reading tips and retention tips, and just kind of a basic getting around and finding academic support and other helpful resources. Okay, so the first thing that I'm going to talk about is the parts of the rubric. So when you're looking at your rubric, you'll see that there is basically three sections that you want to pay attention to. The first one is the overview section, excuse me, which is the general big picture or background information that kind of informs you about what the assignment is all about. The next section is usually the prompt section. And within the prompt section, it's a little bit more detailed, has more of the requirements. It's usually kind of in a guided list format, or it can be like a bulleted format. And it goes into more details of the critical elements section, which is also the chart at the end of your rubrics. So there's usually a guided list that is the critical elements section, and then there's a chart that's delineated by the point breakdown for what is in the critical elements section. Okay? So, first part is the overview section. In the overview section, you can kind of see that it just gives you a little bit of an overview of what the assignment is actually all about. Within the overview section, sometimes you'll have what are called hyperlinks. As you can see at the bottom of that first paragraph, where there's an underlined area, it says 5 habits of successful SNHU students. That's a hyperlink that will take you to a piece of information that your instructor is either wanting you to use, which could be like a template, or it could be an article that they want you to reference for a certain assignment, so on and so forth. So in the overview section, keep your eyes open for those type of hyperlinks. And as you can see, it gives you just kind of a general overview of what the project for SNHU 107, the final project, part 2, is looking for. So it gives you just a general vision of what it is that you'll be doing there. And then in the further parts of the critical elements section, we'll definitely go into a little bit more information. The prompt section, like I said, is where your critical elements are housed. So as you can see, on the top part of the screen here, it says specifically, the following critical elements must be addressed. You'll see that critical elements, the words themselves, are bolded, and then you'll see some corresponding bolded words throughout the actual critical elements section. That will be very common in just about every class that you take at SNHU, and that is done by design. They basically are trying to bring to your attention the most important parts of the assignment. So when you're looking through your rubric, you want to pay attention to this prompt section, specifically the critical elements, because this is where the grades will be coming from when your instructor is making sure that you met all the requirements. As you can also see, like I mentioned in the previous slide, there's also a hyperlink for a template here for this particular assignment. So whenever there is a template that is provided for you, you definitely want to use that, because otherwise there is a chance that you could be docked points for not using the proper template. So best advice is to go through your rubric, first page all the way to the last page. Click on any hyperlinks that might be embedded within the rubric, and make sure that you are using whatever templates or links that they have provided for you. And then as far as the critical elements section, again, the rubric, as you can see, there's two parts on this one that I want to bring to your attention. So being as though I'm already talking about the critical elements, I'll stick with that for now. But as you can see on this chart, it says critical elements, and then it goes down the list. And those critical elements on this chart will actually mirror the ones that we were just looking at in the prompt section. However, this chart then shows you the point breakdown. On the very far right, it has the value, but then it also has these columns where you are wanting to shoot for exemplary, of course. So you want to be able to meet the proficient requirement criteria and then provide additional details, usually is what it will say. So you definitely want to shoot for that exemplary column, and then you'll be able to get the full point value. The other part of this section that I wanted to bring to your attention is at the top of the screen, where it says guidelines for submission. This is where you will learn how to set your paper up. So, for instance, this one says they should be using the academic success plan template, and that all 4 parts of the template are filled out. And then it also says that submissions should be saved and uploaded using the final project to assignment submission tool in the week 7 folder. So the guidelines for submission will be present on just about every rubric. It's always going to be located in the same place, which is just above the chart that you see here. And it could give you additional information. This is, kind of a vague example, but in other ones, they may say that, if you're a psychology major, such as myself, it will tell you that you need to use APA formatting. It will tell you that it has to be 12-point Times New Roman, 1-inch margins, and that you need to have, for any different assignments have different page numbers or page amounts, but just say that, perhaps this one is calling for 3 to 5 pages. It will also tell you that it will not include the cover page and the reference page. So this guidelines for submission section, albeit kind of small, is very important because it does give you all the information on the layout of the paper, and you definitely want to look at that when you're going to set your paper up. Make sure that you're following the guidelines. It will also tell you how many sources you need. If you're doing a paper that you need to find, 7 to 10 references, it will tell you that in that information as well. Okay, jumping ahead a little bit, and we're going to talk a little bit about the citations. So depending on what your major is and what your focus is, there are different types of setups that your papers will be, like APA, MLA, Chicago style. That is all stuff that you will be able to locate in the guidelines for submission section that I was just talking about, okay? But when it comes to citations, these are some very important bullet points here. Anywhere that you share information that's not your own, you will definitely have to include a citation from where you got that information from. So the citations will be comprised of a couple of things. They will be comprised of an in-text citation that is placed alongside your evidence or information and full citation, which will be located in the reference or the bibliography section, or the bibliographic section at the end. Sometimes these words get you. In-text citations are usually, they're parenthetical, as you can see there at the bottom, in APA or MLA style. And in the case of Chicago and Turabian, they'll be like a foot or an endnote section. Now, I will show you further on how to get help on these different citation styles in upcoming slides, but just be aware that whenever you are even paraphrasing information from somebody else's works you want to cite, So my phrase is, whenever in doubt, cite, cite, cite. There's no such thing as citing too much, but there is definitely a thing of not citing enough, okay? Keep that in mind when you're going through with your papers. Now, this is one of the places that you can go to get help with citations. This is in the Shapiro Library, and if you haven't visited them yet, I would definitely get out there and take a little tour of the Shapiro Library and see what there is to offer out there. This screenshot is from the main page of the Shapiro Library. It's over on the left-hand side. It's, as you can see, under a quick links header. And if you click on citing your sources, it will then take you to this. And it, as I mentioned in the previous slide, it has information for all three of the major citation styles that will be used here at SNHU and other colleges worldwide. So the APA style guide, the MLA, and the Chicago style. Those are the three major ones. So when in doubt on which ones you're supposed to use, if it's not clearly stated in the guidelines for submission or anywhere else in your rubric, definitely reach out to your instructor before you turn in any papers and make sure that you're using the correct citation style. And then this is also just another view of, like, when you click on the Chicago style link in the previous slide, it will take you to a page that looks like this. So you can see it gives you a little bit of information about what Chicago style is. It gives you some examples. It gives you an actual example of a bibliography, and then so on and so forth. And there's also video tutorials that can help you as well. So that's basically where it will look the same for all three of the different styles, except that, of course, it will say APA or MLA for the other two. Okay, moving off that topic. I don't have a really nice segue, but we'll roll with it. I want to go over a little bit of reading retention tips. For some of us, it's been a long time since we've been to school, and we're coming back and trying to get our feet wet again. And when it comes to reading and retaining information, especially when it comes to doing homework, it can be a little bit difficult. So I wanted to kind of touch on the 4 stages of reading that the general rule is that the online writing center folks have put forward. They are purpose, so read with a purpose. They are pre-reading, active reading, and rereading. So when it comes to pre-reading, or actually let me start with purpose, sorry. You always want to sit down and start reading something with a purpose in mind. So one recommendation is that you read what we just kind of talked about, the prompt section of the rubric, because that will give you your why. That will give you your reason to what it is that you're actually looking to understand. And when reading the prompt area of it, or the critical elements section of the rubric, that will give you the purpose of what it is that you're reading for. Okay? Then the next one, pre-reading. Now this is literally just previewing the text. So you want to just kind of skim through it and say, okay, how long is this, how long do I have to, say you've got like 2 chapters. How long are these 2 chapters? How much time do I need to devote to this based on the length that I'm looking at? What is it comprised of? Is it tiny text? Is it a story with a dialogue? Is there something really, really important that I like to pay attention to? Are there bolded words or headers? Things like this. If you kind of, skim over it in the pre-reading stage, this lets you get an idea of what you're getting into. And that will also help prepare you mentally for the type of reading that you need to do and how much time you actually need to devote to it. Now, the active reading is kind of one of those things where you want to literally be active while you're reading. So some people like to highlight. I have always been a fan of highlighting with many different colors. And what I've done in the past, and I've learned from other people that have much more experience than me in doing these things, I actually get the colors and have them match what their color is leading back to. So say green, if you have a green highlighter, maybe when you highlight stuff with green, that means you have questions that you need to go back and ask yourself. If you have a yellow highlighter, maybe that's a key point that you need to really pay attention to. Say you've got a pink highlighter, maybe that's just like a great quote or something that you really want to, remember for future reference, etc., etc. Highlighting and then, having a guide as to which the colors denote back to makes a lot of sense, and it's a part of active reading that is really, really helpful so that, because we don't have a lot of time, we want to make sure that the time that we're taking to do our assignments is really, really worthwhile. And that brings me to rereading. So sometimes when you think of rereading, you're like, oh gosh, I just read that whole thing. Do I really have to do that again? I barely had time to do it the first time, right? But rereading can tend to be something that you can look at as like a deeper dive into the active reading. So say you have highlighted notes from when you were doing your active reading. When you go back and you pay attention to those highlighted sections, now they're going to make more sense, okay? So now you're going to look back and go, okay, I know why I highlighted that in the way that I did. Or sometimes you might go back and say, I shouldn't have highlighted that at all. This isn't going to be imperative to the assignment whatsoever. This is where your critical thinking skills are going to kind of set in, and you're going to start to be able to weed out the information that you don't really need to have. Okay, now we're going to change gears once again. This is a couple of slides that I'm going to show you on how to find some helpful resources here at SNHU. So within your learning modules, as you can see if you click on learning modules on the left-hand side there, at the end of all of your learning modules, there is an area or a tab for academic support. As the one on the right shows, it shows that at the end of Module 10, that's for graduate students. They have 10 weeks. So those of you that are not graduate students, you'll find your academic support button at the end of Module 8. And when you click on that academic support tab there, it will take you to this screen. And on this screen, here's where you can do some other things. You can upload a paper for written feedback from the Online Writing Center folks. As you can see here, it does say that you should allow 48 hours for any feedback to be returned. And keep that in mind, especially towards the end of any terms, because they do get really busy towards the end of the terms, and it might literally take 2 days for them to get that back to you. And then you can also see here at the bottom it says schedule a workshop or a one-on-one appointment. That is a link that will take you to our Appointment Plus, which is where people can book appointments with tutors or coaches. And you can also book an appointment, or you can book with a workshop. If there's a workshop that you're interested in going to, if you schedule it, it will send you an email reminder so that you don't forget about it. Okay, and then there's just a couple of other things here too. There's SNHU Connect, which is our learning communities. There's learning communities for everything from business to nursing to healthcare to math, liberal arts, and social sciences and STEM. So if you wanted to get out there and chat with some fellow peers that are in the same area as you would want to go and check out SNHU Connect. This is also circled here. You can see there's another link here for academic support. And how to find this. This is actually located on the bottom of your main My SNHU page. So like where you go to get your email and where you go to get into Brightspace. When you first log in to SNHU, My SNHU, this is located at the bottom. Okay, so that is really all I had to say for this workshop today. It really is kind of helpful if you just get out there and move around a little bit, get your feet wet. Get your feet wet in Shapiro Library, get your feet wet in academic support. Check out, if you go to the learning communities, like I was just showing you on that last slide in SNHU Connect, you can also find the workshop calendars for all of the workshops that we offer. We have a lot of them. So it would take a lot of time for me to show you all of them, but definitely go out there and just move about and learn your way around, and then you'll be able to easily access